Crockett's terrible cousin re-enters his life and causes all kinds of trouble on today's unusually lighthearted Miami Vice. Jack of All Trades was directed by Vern Gillum and was written by Ken Solars from a story idea by Robert Ward. There's no Castillo in it, there's no Gina in it, there's no Trudy in it, there's very little Tubbs and Switek, and honestly there's not a great deal of Crockett in it. Nevertheless, it manages to be fairly entertaining. Let's dive in. A con artist named Jack, played by David Andrews, races through a shopping center pursued by goons. He ducks into a boutique dressing room and uses a phony credit card to buy some clothes, then ducks out the back where he's caught by mall security. He's taken to police headquarters where he tells a string of obvious lies about working with the FBI on top-secret government projects. Jack asks to speak to someone whom he claims is his FBI handler, and the next thing you know, Crockett, with Tubbs along for the ride, is visiting Jack in the interrogation room because Jack is Jack Crockett, Sonny's no-good cousin. When Tubbs asks Crockett why he's never talked about Jack, Crockett replies, "You ever talk about dandruff?" Because the script for this episode is often very funny. The script is also often very bloated and meandering, however, because in the very next scene, Jack takes Crockett to his workplace where he's selling cut-raked pool cleaners, and there's an interminable scene in which he talks a dude named Miguel into buying his products. Seriously, this scene goes on for years and includes a full product demonstration. Miguel's father turns out to be a Cuban drug lord named Ray Solis, played by Robert Miranda, and he summons Jack to his mansion to demand a refund for the faulty pool cleaner. While he's there, Jack snoops around and observes some shady business going down in the garage. Jack is visited at his workplace by the thugs who were chasing him in the opening sequence. They're headed up by a man named Harry Grubbs, whom Jack had conned out of 50 grand. Grubbs is played by our old friend John Santucci, the Crime Story star and former real-life jewel thief who also appeared in Golden Triangle and Lombard. Grubbs gives Jack 24 hours to repay the 50 grand. So Jack dons a rat mask and robs Solis at gunpoint. Jack repays Grubbs, but then he's apprehended by Solis's goons, who take him back to Solis's mansion at gunpoint and rough him up. Solis identifies him as the dude who robbed him by Jack's salmon-colored loafers, and you may be thinking to yourself, wow, it was pretty boneheaded of Jack to wear such distinctive footwear while committing a robbery. But honestly, it was 1989 and salmon-colored loafers were very commonplace. I had a pair, and I wore them to shreds. I bought them at Payless in Spokane. Solis gives Jack another 24 hours to return the stolen money, so Jack returns to Harry Grubbs and asks for the 50 grand back, explaining that Solis's goons will kill him. In what seems like an act of uncharacteristic kindness, Grubbs gives him the money. Only it turns out that the money Grubbs gives Jack, which Jack then gives to Solis, is actually counterfeit. Jack is picked up by Solis's boss, a dreaded crime lord named Octavio Escudero, who is played by Jesse Borrego, who we saw last season in A Bullet for Crockett. Like many Miami Vice villains this season, Escudero is a massive affectations. He wears flowing poet shirts and flounces around an extravagant mansion while misquoting Shakespeare. It's a semi-comedic performance, and this is a semi-comedic episode, so it works. The counterfeit money was originally manufactured by Escudero, and he's irate at having it returned to him. He's all set to kill Jack, but Jack convinces him that his business partner can repay the money. So Escudero's goons take Jack to see Crockett, who assesses the situation in a flash and hustles Jack to safety. Jack explains the situation to an utterly furious Crockett, and Crockett reluctantly agrees to help his cousin get out of the jam he's in. So Crockett poses, somewhat unconvincingly, as a mafioso and visits Escudero to see if they can work out a deal for Jack's life. Crockett offers to buy a great deal of cocaine from Escudero, and Escudero agrees to this. Jack, being an idiot, visits Grubbs to yell at him about almost getting him killed with the counterfeit money. He smugly mentions that his cousin is a vice cop. It turns out that Grubbs has been doing business with Escudero, and he passes along the tidbit that Crockett is an undercover cop. So when Crockett and Jack arrive to make the deal, Escudero announces his intention to kill them. Escudero locks them in a storeroom together, and Crockett and Jack quickly come to blows. When Escudero's goons investigate the ruckus, Crockett and Jack fight their way out. Crockett, with the aid of Switek, takes out the goons and Escudero, and Jack takes off in a speedboat with 50 grand of Vice's cash, which Crockett had brought to the meet. Switek is concerned about this, but Crockett reassures him he used counterfeit cash. By the way, all music in this episode is performed by the Swingle Singers, a long-standing a cappella vocal ensemble that covers classical music, pop songs, and jazz standards. Here they exclusively perform pieces by Bach. You've probably heard them before. For example, their music was used prominently in the TV show Glee, which has the unfortunate side effect of making this episode at times seem like an episode of Glee, which is a concept I have a difficult time wrapping my head around. This is a fluffy, insubstantial episode. It's cute. I don't really have much to say about it because there's really not much to it. At one point, Crockett complains that Jack never had much time for him when they were kids and wouldn't let him ride his motorcycle, and Jack replies that he didn't want to contaminate Crockett. Crockett was the golden boy of the family with a lot of promise ahead of him, and Jack didn't want to be the one to ruin that. This is a surprisingly sweet yet complicated sentiment in the middle of this wildly uncomplicated episode. I love the implication that, as deeply messed up as Crockett is, he's apparently known as the sole member of the Crockett family with his act together. I don't have strong feelings about this episode, but I think 3 flamingos sounds about right. Next time, Tubbs is held captive in a dungeon by a man he'd previously arrested. Join me then, and in the meantime, please feel free to chat with me on Twitter about Miami Vice, and have a great week.